We have just one more presentation, and we will close for the day. I hope you'll be patient. So we would like to welcome our final speaker for today, for day 2, Dr. Orland Hoeber, who will be speaking on answers are not always the solution, finding a balance between Gen AI and human intelligence in academic digital library search. Dr. Orland Hoeber is a professor of computer science at the University of Regina, as well as the co-founder and chief scientist at Dialects Search. His primary research interest is at the intersection of interactive information retrieval and information visualization. He has an active research team working on the design, development, and study of visual and interactive software to support exploration, analysis, reasoning, and discovery in the context of digital library search. Dialects Search provides a search and discovery layer over Ex Libris Primo, supporting neurodiverse searchers with visual memory aids that enable cross-session and cross-device searching. In the next 15 minutes, we'll be interacting with Dr. Hoeber. Let's put our hands together for him.
All right, everything's working with the technology. Thank you for the introduction. I'm here to talk a lot, or maybe a little bit, about how do we find this balance between this kind of fantastic technology, generative AI, but also the human intelligence of doing things and searching for information. So the talk is primarily focused on academic digital library search, a little bit of public library search, but really it comes down to how do people use generative AI to enhance their searching, and can we actually take a step back from that a little bit and keep the human agency in searching in the process. So we've heard the word RAG a couple times this afternoon. I want to talk just at a high level what RAG is, Retrieval Augmented Generation. You've already seen this happening when you do any kind of Google search or Bing search or so on. And what it is doing is taking a query, trying to turn it into a question for which there's a concise answer, a single answer. So the process is to take your query, rewrite it a couple different ways, send it to a search engine, collect all these search results, try to organize them in a way that is kind of ranking what is the most important or what is the best match for these different types of searches that it's created out of your single query. It takes the top end of those and tries to give you an answer. And so the idea is you ask it a query like, something around global warming, and it'll try to kind of find search results and give you an answer for that. And so here we have Copilot giving us the answer, Google giving us the answer. Even if we search within our academic library at our university, again, it's trying to pull in these resources and give you an answer. And the real fundamental thing is that not all the searching that we do needs a single answer. The single answer is great when the thing that we're looking for is clear, we know what is good and bad, we know what is right or wrong, and that's fantastic. But what happens when we don't really know what we're looking for? Maybe we're searching because we're trying to learn. Maybe we're searching because our professor has given us a task to try to find the breadth of resources that are available. This idea of kind of taking everything and collapsing it into an answer kind of almost gets rid of the friction of searching, the friction of discovery, and the friction of learning. And I'm using friction in a positive way, making the human brain think, making the human brain work to do things. So if our search task is clear, it's concise, we just need a single answer, these things work fantastic. If I'm doing an academic search, I'm trying to find an article that is talking about something that I know a lot about, I can tell right from wrong very, very easily. I can tell good from bad very easily. But when we ask our students to start searching, they don't have that ability, they don't have that experience to tell right from wrong, good from bad. So what if the search task is related to academic work where the goal is actually to learn? When we give students assignments to search, to find resources, we give students assignments to try to understand the breadth of information, that's when these RAG approaches start to fall apart. So in this context of academic digital libraries, these are like resources that have curated collections of quality information. If we look at searching the web, we look at searching using Copilot or even ChatGPT, if we think of it as a search engine, it's pulling in information from the web, primarily like unvetted information. And so when we ask our students to search within the library, we want them to search within this kind of collection of information that we know is of high quality. And this is why libraries are not going away anytime soon. They're this source of reliable information that is very, very important. And so the purpose when we're searching within these academic libraries is to enable learning and enable research and enable understanding for the people that exist within our community, our academic community, students, researchers, lecturers, professors, and so on. And so providing the answer via RAG, via retrieval augmented generation, is often misaligned with the reason why we want to be searching, and that's to discover new things and really to kind of go through that process of learning. And so the risk that we face right now is, we've heard the phrase cognitive offloading a couple times, and that's a real, real risk, that we ask people to search for information, they turn their brains off, they turn their fingers on, they start typing, they get an answer, they copy and paste, and then they're done. And the reality is that we have to have ways where people can put a little bit of human intelligence in the process and then use generative AI to kind of help support, not replace the searching that we want people to do. And so we need to somehow find a balance between generative AI, so doing things for us automatically, this automation of human language creation, and the human intelligence of thinking and learning and really going through that process of trying to make sense of the information that we're looking for. And so this is a research direction that I'm working on, but we have to take a step back first and think about how do we actually develop academic search interfaces that help us provide a framework or a foundation that goes beyond a query box and 10 blue links, if we think about how a search set of search results look, or if we think about the ChatGPT approach to searching, which is a text field and a generated answer. And the reality is that when we're doing academic searching, we aren't trying to pile all the things we're doing in academic searching together into one big pile. What we need to do is start to have processes where people can keep different groups of information that they're searching for distinct from one another. And so that's where some of the work that we did a number of years ago with dialect search is really important to be thinking about right now. So we need to have these multi-workspace search environments. So if I'm a student taking 4 different classes or 5 different classes, the searching that I'm doing for one needs to be kept separate from the searching that I'm doing from the other ones. Otherwise, we get this collapse of information into one big pile. And then the ability to remember our past search activities is also really important. Having this history so I can come back later and see where I was. The type of searching that students do is not just a single down, get it done and walk away. It's meant to be an engagement of thinking and an engagement of doing that spreads out over time. So the support for cross-session searching is important. We want to have this transition between mobile devices and desktop environments because students are increasingly doing work on their mobile devices, academic work, work for the purposes of research, and then supporting not just giving the answer, but exploration and discovery and learning. And then foundation to all this is accessible design. We need to make it available for all students of all abilities. So I'm just going to flip through a few interface screens of dialect search just so you can kind of see what it looks like. It has a workspace overview that gives us a bit of a history of what's available or what we've done in the past. If we get into something we've done in the past, we can see the queries we used and how successful we were with those queries. This is all meant to help us remember what we were doing in the past searching so we can get back to searching again. When we're in the midst of, when we want to see what we found already, we can look at the things we found and we can explore amongst that found information. These are my resources that I found while I was searching, not things that are being generated for me or pushed to me. We can then explore amongst these using some keywords. We have some deep integration into our existing library. So all the things we do to customize our existing library are all available here. And then again, further exploration of the things that I found in the past. And then this all works equally well for mobile search. So I'm flipping through these really fast because this is already available at our university's academic library. This little button that says dialect search, if you click on that, you can start using this today. So the question is, now that we have this framework for keeping track of all my different search activities, my search interests, and the history of me doing things, How can we augment this human activity of search with generative AI? And again, the issue is not to replace what we're doing with just giving the answer, but to enhance this search activity with this powerful technology of generating human language. And one of the things we can think about in terms of generating human language is what can we do with that in the context of this search activity. So we want to leverage large language models, leverage generative AI to support the journey of searching rather than jumping to the destination. We don't want students to get to the answer and just pull the answer out and walk away. We want them to go through this process of searching. So supporting critical assessment and learning, and then carefully considering balancing this human intelligence and making sure that we still enable that. Where can the AI take over? And then how do we manage this interaction between humans and AIs and letting the human be the controller of things? There was a mention earlier, or just in this last session, or the last talk, about human-in-the-loop systems. And I want to say we shouldn't have humans in the loop. We should have humans outside the loop and put the AI in the loop. The humans are on the outside controlling things. The AI is helping us and supporting us. But they aren't controlling things. They aren't running the show. So some of the techniques that we've been using, some of these are samples that are coming out of some of the work done by my grad students. Some of it is public library searching. Some of it is academic library searching. And they kind of go hand in hand in what we're doing here. So one of the things we can do is if you're in the context of searching, we want to help somebody search, we can use large language models and generative AI to give us query refinements and query suggestions. If I found a few things that I find are interesting, what can I do to use the large language model to give me suggestions about other queries to use, to find other things? So again, I'm in control of it, but it's giving me suggestions. So that's one technique that we've been working on. Another one is doing summarization of what I've found so far. If sessions are going to span over multiple, or searches are going to span over multiple sessions, how can I use the large language model and the generative AI to remind me of what I did 2 weeks ago, or 5 weeks ago, or 3 months ago, or last year when I come back to it today? And so we've developed some mechanisms of being able to automatically summarize what was found and giving users the control of organizing this information and let the summaries then be created for us. Sometimes when we're doing this, there's very specific passages or terms that are really, really important when I'm doing a search, when I find something that's interesting. And so we're developing mechanisms where the user can interactively highlight the things that are important to them. And then that's being used as information provided into the generative AI to generate summaries that aren't just summaries of the generic information that I found, but summaries of the specific things that I'm interested in. And then this kind of takes us in the direction of thinking about neurodiverse searchers, searchers that have things like dyslexia or ADHD. One of the big problems that we have with the current state of generative AI is everything is being pushed towards text-based interaction. But when people have a hard time processing text, or when processing text consumes all of their working memory, it's really hard to stay focused on what you're doing. So what we're working on right now are some studies with people that have dyslexia when we're giving them guidance on what they've done thus far. So in this particular interface, if you look on the right-hand side, you see a summary of all the queries I've issued, all the search results I've saved, and that's always present when the user is searching. So if I get distracted or I lose focus on what I'm doing, I can easily see what I've done just recently and use that as a tip or a guidance to help me keep track of things. The next steps for this line of research is to leverage generative AI to help people maybe know where to look next, or maybe to do a little bit of management of what is the next query to look at. Here's highlighting some search results where there's gaps and so on. So again, helping them to do the searching, but not replacing the search activity itself. And the risk that we have with, again, if we're thinking about neurodiverse searcher, is finding that right balance between agency and automation, and it's particularly acute with people that are in these kind of neurodiverse ranges. And again, the reality is we're all neurodiverse in our own way. And so if we design things for neurodiverse searchers, we're really designing things for all searchers. So the key takeaways that I want you to get out of this talk, it was a high-level view of a lot of research that I'm doing. The first one is that Gen AI-enhanced search focuses on answer generation, but jumping to the answer is not always what we want, and it actually creates this problem of cognitive offloading. There's no thinking going on anymore. It's just taking the answer and walking away and forgetting that you ever did it. We need to maintain friction in the search. while streamlining the process of undertaking search tasks that span sessions and span devices. So maintaining that human agency, maintaining that friction, the effort of searching is the effort of learning, is the effort of thinking, and those are all positive efforts, not negative efforts. We don't want to automate that too much. And in reality, any automation is actually taking the thinking away, and we want to be careful about what thinking are we really taking away. And then if we're thinking about the framework of accessible search, we need to choose carefully where the Gen AI can enhance the search process and, more importantly, not replace it. The thinking and searching is really, really important. And then, we need to be careful about not to leave neurodiverse searchers behind. This text-first interface that we're facing makes me feel like we're back to the old days of DOS and command line interaction with our computers. Nobody liked that. Sorry, I shouldn't say nobody. There's a small group of my people in computer science that like that, but the reality is that very few other people like that. And the ability to see, point and click, leverage our ability to recognize what we're wanting to do rather than having to recall what we're doing or recall from our memory what to do, that's really, really important. And especially in the context of people that have working memory limitations and attention limitations. And this happens to all of us because working memory and attention are also influenced very much by environmental factors. If I'm really, really tired, I'm fatigued, I'm stressed, my working memory availability is down, my attention is down, the things that we do to support neurodiverse searchers are going to support all searchers. And the reality is that human-centered AI is the key to all of this. We need to think about who the people are, and we build for people, not to replace people. Finding this balance so that we can leverage human intelligence with generative AI, not replace it. So this research, funded by NSERC primarily through discovery grants and alliance grants. It's also been supported by, what's happened? My slides have disappeared. Okay, so I'll just talk. So supported by NSERC, supported by the John Archer Library at the University of Regina, and particularly Dale Story and Veronica Ramshaw, Regina Public Library and the Saskatchewan Information Library Services Consortium, and a handful of my grad students, Sebastian Gomez, who's finished already, Kimia Orland, who's finished, Hanye Kakshur, Anita Sahun, and Milad Momemi, who are all kind of in process and hopefully finishing very, very soon. So thank you, and I tried to keep it to 15 minutes, and I think I was pretty close. So yeah.